Okay, so
done.
Welcome everyone to month 684 of Corona lockdown, and which means it's the August 12, 2020 Sydney Modern Management Meetup. So it's good to see that we've got quite a good turn up again from a few familiar names, and it looks like that we've got some additional people on board as well. So welcome everyone. My name is Mike O'Shea, and you've got so Ben's online now that Stephen has finished. He has reappeared.
Hello.
And I guess just for the just some of the things that we're trying to do, seeing that we're not sort of meeting in person at the moment, is first of all, if anyone is new and wants to unmute themselves or just sort of drop some notes about themselves into the chat window, like things that you're working on, things that you're interested in hearing about. If you've got ideas for things that you want us to cover in the future, please drop that information in. It makes our lives a lot easier when people are proposing things as opposed to a couple of us reaching out to each other and going, what are we talking about tonight? No, so it's good. We've actually got a few months planned in advance this time. So we sort of, at the last session, we did go through and discuss a few things, and people raised the topics they wanted. So we're actually in pretty good shape, probably for most of this year anyway. Now, the other things that we'll just sort of cover off quickly, just to give you an idea of the way that we normally run these, is we'll just talk about a couple of things that are new. Generally, we don't spend too much time on these, but if there are things of interest, if there are things that we haven't got included here, please jump in and ask questions, or if there's something on there that we haven't included that has really changed some of the things you're doing, please make sure you let us know, even if you're just doing it in the chat window. Now, one of the topics that was raised last month when we were talking about different things, especially now that a lot of us are going to be working from home a lot more than we have previously, is what people are doing around their build environment. So having a test environment at home, or whether you're doing, I'm sure, like depending on your organization, you might have decent Azure subscriptions or some on-prem infrastructure where you can deploy a bunch of stuff. But we know that that's not always the case. So we'll talk about a few of the things here in terms of some of the ways to sort of maybe get different types of subscriptions, maybe some hardware recommendations. It's fairly open, and I'm sure pretty much everyone is going to have a bit of input into this one, because it's probably something that everyone has to do some degree of. And then we'll switch over to Richard, who wants to talk about some of the work that he's been doing around provisioning identity into to SaaS apps from Azure AD. So we've got quite a few things that we can talk about. Now, just to sort of to kick off, if there is anyone who's new who wants to jump in and just say hi to everyone, or if you've already done that in the chat window, I'm just checking into the chat window here. I know this, I can't believe that Nathan wants to stay hiding in the background. That doesn't sound like Nathan at all.
I'm very upset about that, Nathan.
Yeah. If you take gifts to Canberra with you, Nathan will come out of the woodwork.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I've
gifts.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so
yeah, I'm just going to give everyone a heads up. It sounds like the entire train infrastructure for Melbourne is being modified outside of my window right now. There's a high-pitched screaming noise, so I'm probably going to be on mute unless I need to speak.
Yeah. And now I'm looking in the chat window, I can see that David mentioned that Peter Warren reference that I made, he completely understands what it is. So thank you, David, for proving that I don't imagine everything that I experience. Some of it I do, but not everything. Okay, so I guess just to sort of jump in and talk about a few of the things that are new this month, it seemed like it was a fairly quiet month overall. There are a few things that I've got listed in here, but as I was going through, I think like I was expecting a lot more announcements because of Inspire. So one of the things that I thought we'd be actually doing like an entire segment on was things that were announced at Inspire this year. But I think we're at the point now where stuff is just released on such a frequent basis that the chances are there's not going to be some big announcement that sort of changes, like might change some people in IT's lives in terms of the capabilities. But I think we generally get a bit of, we all get access to public previews and things like that these days. So I think some of that stuff that would have been sort of higher impact just wasn't there. But was there anything that anyone saw at Inspire or in terms of the Inspire announcements in July that jumped out at them? Is there anything that anyone can think of?
Nathan mentions Lighthouse.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, so there probably were a bunch of things on the Azure side. I just wasn't paying all that much attention over there. I probably should. And I think last year at Inspire, Tom pulled me into a side meeting he had about Lighthouse, and I was sitting there going, I don't know why Tom did that, but it's Tom. So, so what is it? So I think George, you've come along to one of the Sydney in-person ones, haven't you, a while back? If I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. Back when we could actually meet people in person. So I guess there wasn't. I guess as far as the modern management, the EMS, Azure AD side, there wasn't anything that really jumped out, I guess, that wasn't already sort of known or in public preview. There could have been other things. But jumping into some of the things that have been announced over the last month or so, updates to reporting in Power BI. Now, Ben, you were before we sort of started this off, you were talking about some of the Intune reports. Have you been playing around with the Power BI stuff?
As in using like Power BI to access the Intune data gateway stuff?
Yeah.
Not as much as Adam has been doing, our other partner in crime over at Intune Training. He's been doing some pretty crazy stuff with that.
Okay.
I've got plenty of time to talk about the frustrations of working with live data in Power BI from Intune, but it's probably not the right time to do it.
Yeah, we'll give you a session in the future for that one.
Cool.
Now, the next one, I don't think anyone's going to be, or if anyone on the call is upset about this one, I think we need to have a conversation. New customers, people who haven't already deployed the on-prem connector for Exchange won't be able to do that moving forward. Now, I think the wording of the announcement is basically that it's being removed. You actually have to read the announcement to see that if you're already using it, they're not taking it away from you yet. So, so I think that we're starting to see a few more of these things where there's that end of support for things is becoming a bit getting a bit closer. Is anyone on the call still using, first of all, Exchange on-prem, and if so, with the Intune connector?
We are using it. We initially set up to see how many users using ActiveSync, and now migration is about to complete. So we wanted to remove.
Okay. Yep.
Connector. Yeah. So it's in time probably.
Yeah. Yep. So then other things. Yeah. Edge templates being updated. What else? Yeah. Android Enterprise. Is anyone doing much with Android Enterprise?
Not heaps.
Yeah, we are doing a little bit with the Samsung Knox, and we didn't have much joy with the. Let me introduce. My name is Pratik. I work for Bupa as a contractor, and we didn't have much luck with the devices that we get part of Google Enterprise offering, but we did some good work with the Samsung Knox.
Cool.
Okay, so because even there's only one person I can really think of off the top of my head who's going out and like actively, going through all of the Android enterprise stuff in Intune. So maybe I might need to reach out to him if that's something that we need to cover in the future. It's going to be okay. It's going to be morning for him. So I guess if we give him enough notice, we can probably get him on board for that. Now, the other one, this is one that's probably more interesting all up, is the Defender Firewall migration tool has gone into preview. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at that one yet. I haven't looked at it yet to sort of get an idea of how it works. But from what I can gather just from the quick description, it's PowerShell scripts we're running to collect the information we need to then start pushing out the policies through Intune. So has anyone worked with that one yet?
Not yet, but that's something that I'm going to start looking at in the next couple of weeks because we've got some clients that are looking, asking about it.
Okay.
But it does look cool, yeah.
Yeah. And then for Defender ATP, adding certificates for indicators of compromise, that went into public. That's in public preview. I'm pretty sure it's still in preview now. So that when we're doing things like control folder access and setting up trust levels for certain applications, we can now use the certs from the basically certs for the apps to start working with that. And I think some of the documentation has gone live for that. I don't think there's a huge amount on it yet. And then finally for Azure AD, one of the big ones is now your Windows Hello for Business sign-ins will show in your AAD sign-in logs. So this is one that was a bit weird that it wasn't there, because if any of you were using Windows Analytics previously, Windows Analytics under the device analytics would be showing you the different sign-in types on the device, and it would be showing you the Windows Hello for Business. So whether you're doing PIN, fingerprint, or Face ID. So it was something that they were already collecting in some solutions, but Azure AD logs just weren't showing it at all. So that was one that it wasn't until they announced that it was there that I realized that it wasn't actually there already. It's one of those things that I just sort of thought, wouldn't it be there already? But no. Yeah. Now, next up, RDS web client supporting, or App Proxy now supports RDS web client. I don't know how, I guess it's something where they've still got to give some love to on-prem RDS. So I guess that's, it's as much as everyone's yelling WVD, I think there's still a lot of people who are going to basically run their on-prem RDS infrastructure into the ground before they move over. So just doing it through App Proxy, getting conditional access, MFA, et cetera, definitely going to give some nice improvements for remote access there. And then the final one, I haven't had too much of a look at this one yet. It only popped up on my radar a day or two ago, which was some updates to conditional access around the client app targeting. So it's probably even something that lights up obviously in the UI. So I can sort of have a bit of a play around with it. And maybe next time we do an Azure AD or just a conditional access what's new session, we can jump in and take a look at it. But it seems like they've got a few things in there, basically, getting ready for the cutoff dates for legacy auth support inside of Office 365, et cetera. Okay. Now, the other thing with that is just remember that it is really easy to go through even if you've just got Azure AD free as part of an Azure subscription, even without having Office 365 Azure AD or one of the premium SKUs, you can go through and to easily start filtering on the apps in use to see what kind of authentication is being used, to see if there are any legacy auth methods still in place if you're not blocking them already. So they've made some huge improvements and made that pretty broadly available. And they probably started rolling that stuff out back in March. But it's one of those things whenever I show it to people that they didn't realize that they could get some of that info that easily.
Yeah. Mark, you missed a very important one for Intune.
What one was that?
The endpoint.microsoft.com is now the only place to go to manage Intune.
Oh, yes.
As of the 1st of August, we did a clickbait video on it a couple of days ago.
That one is...
Technically, it's not new because it was announced, months ago, but officially now, if you go to, I know a lot of people who were resistant to going to the new portal. If you try to go to portal.azure.com and then go to Intune, it throws up a thing saying, "Not here, mate. You need to move to endpoint."
Yep. And if you were previously going to manage.microsoft.com because you're a poor soul still dealing with Silverlight admin portal that had been rerouted to portal.azure, gone.
Yeah,
no longer there.
So it's worth knowing. Anyone in here that has anything to do with Intune, just in a cursory, not their day job thing, just know that the endpoint has changed and it's for the better.
Yes.
Now, this ties back to I think Steve and I were having the conversation a month or two ago, saying we should have a slide each month of the farewell to those we've loved slide.
In memoriam.
Yeah, but then we realized it's probably not a good time to put something like that in with that wording. Because it could have been sitting there side by side with a Tombstone for with the on-prem connector, but maybe not the right thing to be saying at this point in time.
I love it.
Yeah. Now, I guess the only probably the people that I know that are probably going to complain about the Azure portal deprecation, I'll use the correct term, deprecation of Intune features, are people who don't really do much Intune, but do some Intune alongside other stuff that's in the Azure portal.
100%.
I think the ones who've got their own, they've got their own dashboard, etc. I think they're the ones that are probably going to go, well, why am I forced to go over here? And I think I palmed part of this request over to you, Ben, where there was someone that we were dealing with who was getting confused between the terminology around endpoint manager and the new endpoint security policies. Totally, a bunch of the questions that were coming through, just like the questions at first weren't making sense, because it's like, no, you can keep doing things the same way. It's like, but when I do it, it doesn't show up. And it's like, well, it's there. And it's like, but that's not where I'm looking for it.
Yeah.
So and I think that's what we're likely to see.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, one of the other big things, I don't want to, spend too much time talking on Intune because I know we've got some really good sessions, but one of the big things that's happened recently that makes the endpoint portal a really good place to be as far as people who are going to be maintaining and managing devices that are Intune enrolled is that you now have the ability to access privileged identity management from the endpoint portal.
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah, so essentially what that means is that your management staff can now, they obviously don't need to have those roles assigned, but from Endpoint Portal they can log in, they can go to, let's go in and have a look.
I haven't done any maintenance in this one for a few weeks, so it's probably going to have a bit of
right.
red floating around.
I'll judge you a lot. Go into tenant administration. And from there, you just go into Azure AD Privileged Identity Management.
Okay. And because this is a P2 Azure AD subscription, it's all there.
Yeah. So just go into My Roles, and then from there, you can go into Eligible Assignments, and you can activate from there. So the point is that your support staff now can be given access to device administration or Intune administration, and then from the endpoint portal, which is where they need to do the work anyway, they can activate those roles. And with the new change to PIM, where the activations happen without needing a reboot or a close of the browser, they can activate. It takes a couple of minutes, and then they can do the work that they need to do and close out. So it's a really big push to use PIM now, which I mean I think is a fantastic thing. Yeah, and it just means you've now got an end-to-end portal for your device management, which is a good thing.
So do you like the way that what you can see here makes it appear that I don't even have directory reader access at the moment?
It's good.
But if I
go into active assignments,
no. I think you might have an idea, something rhyming with Lobel. Bad
How about we have a look at expired assignments then?
Okay, I don't know what I'd have in there. I don't think anything now.
No results.
No, that's just a way that I can sort of bluff and pretend that it's real without it getting prompted every 30 seconds during demos.
Totally. No, that's good. But yeah, so having PIM accessible directly from this portal was a big thing. I mean, a lot of people were complaining, saying, if you're taking all of the management away from me, from the main portal, what about PIM? So this is, this was their answer. They were like, okay, well, we can access PIM now.
Rather than bouncing between going to one portal to get access, and then waiting for whatever it is to kick in. So that's a good one. I didn't realize that it had been moved in. So
I honestly don't remember when it happened, but it's a huge thing. And it basically means that you can have your support staff that are using endpoint.microsoft.com and don't need to necessarily know that it's an Azure thing. It's just where they go to manage devices.
Okay. So anything else? Does anyone want to sort of throw anything else in that they've seen or over the last month or so that we haven't covered off? Quox sort of dropped in that link around the those conditional access policies. So I just haven't had time to dig in and see what it really is. But if Quox would like to unmute himself for a moment and talk about it, that would be
just put him on
I'm
the
not going to
spot.
put him. I'm not going to put him on the spot at all.
Yeah, not really, Mark. But since you put me on the spot anyway, my understanding is in the past CA would only apply to modern auth. Now it defaults to all auth unless you explicitly specify or exclude. So example is ActiveSync now gets triggered, whereas before you could bypass that.
So
but it could trip people up, thinking, why suddenly all my users blocked because they're still using a legacy ActiveSync client,
which they should have gotten under control already.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
In theory,
right?
they should have.
It's being deprecated, but it's just that that additional push to say, hey, you need to move away from this, and we're going to start doing some things to force it.
Yeah, they've already got some good stuff in there around, even just blocking legacy auth just block legacy auth altogether.
Yep, just do it like randomly on a Thursday afternoon, see if there's any problems. Yeah. Make sure you're taking Friday off.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so anything else? I'm just scrolling back through the chat window in case I missed anything. What else have we got? It doesn't look as if we've got any extra things dropped in, but okay. So let's jump in, and this is going to be fairly open. So either jump in, unmute yourself if you want to contribute to this. So I've kind of broken it into three different, three different sections here. The first one, I'll show you a little trick you can use I know there's at least 3 Microsoft people on the call, so there's nothing
being recorded.
We can drop
bad.
them.
Yeah, there's nothing bad in what I'm showing you. The software allows you to do it. There's nothing bad you're doing. You're just using things in ways that maybe weren't the intended way. Now, if I get a cease and desist, I will walk back everything I said and pretend that it was all doctored recordings. So let me just sort of kick off that running a trial thing, just so we can go through that, so I can show you some of the things that you can do. So let's start off with something where, if someone's got, let's say you've just got an Azure AD subscription, even if it's an Azure AD free or an Azure AD trial. One of the things that you can do when you've got this is, rather than doing things even though you've obviously, even in here, you've got your Azure AD piece, we can go through and create a new, let's say we just want to create new Azure Active Directory. And what this will do is just go through and set up a new instance that, come on, wake up. There we go. This will create a new instance that isn't really tied to the current tenant or subscription that you've got. The thing that's the glue that holds it together, that basically links the two, is the account you're using to create this. So if I just type in, let's say, M365 MMUG, hopefully, I don't think that's one that someone would have taken yet. We'll put it into Australia, and we'll create this. I'm just going through and creating a new Azure AD tenant that I'll use as the basis for something else moving forward. Now, the reason why I tend to use this method is sometimes if you just want to sign up for, so the easy way, rather than doing what I'm doing, is just to go, just search for setup Office 365 trial or M365 trial and walk through the wizard. But there was a period a couple of weeks or months back where if you went to do that, a lot of the SKUs weren't available unless you set up a free trial, but you could only set up the free trial if you were providing your credit card number to start getting charged after the free trial. And if you're anything like me, you tend to forget those things and you start getting these charges that you're not quite sure where they're coming from. So it seems like they've reverted around some of that. But what we can do here is we can go through, create this new account. It shouldn't take too much longer. And I'll just sort of walk you through a couple of things you can do in here once you've got it created, because once it's created, all we really need to do is add a new global admin account to it for the tenant that we've just created, because we can't use, so in this case, the reason why I need to set up, why I have to do it is because the subscriptions that I've got here associated with my Microsoft account, not an Azure AD account, it's kind of annoying that there's certain things I have to do a little bit differently. But in this case, let's just jump in and manage that. So let's do the good old create the new admin account called global admin. So I'm not being shy.
Wow.
Actually, let's just make
it allows you to use a user account called
yeah.
admin.
I'll just put in admin. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Azure AD lets you do things that Azure itself doesn't do. If I was trying to do this with an Azure VM, it would be yelling at me and saying, no, you can't do that.
Don't try to hack this account.
Lord Vader.
Now, I just need to get this off screen for a second so I can copy that password.
What, you don't
because
trust all your friends?
I don't trust any of you.
I appreciate not having to edit this video.
I'll be lazy. I won't set up a group and assign. I'll just drop them. I'm breaking a lot of track. I'm basically.
We were just talking about PM. Come on, man.
Yeah, but this we can't do it in this subscription because this is a tenant that's only got Azure AD free.
Gotcha.
But we can start turning that stuff on. We'll drop in location.
Antarctica.
Close enough.
Job title. Yeah, I think this will do. Let's just get an in private session. And now we can go to admin.microsoft.com. Grab that username. Go through a password reset.
Sure you got enough accounts there, Mark?
No, I need more. Some of them I can explain. Any of the ones that are important, I've got them in a spreadsheet. Not with the passwords though. Okay, so
yes,
that's a separate spreadsheet or password.
My Key Vault notepad.
Okay, so now that I've just got this base tenant, if we take a look, there's no licensing or anything in here just yet because I haven't added anything. Now this is where things were going a little bit wonky like a month or so ago, where this screen, you basically got to, okay, it's wonky again. This is the old screen that I shouldn't be seeing, but we are seeing it here. Now, in this case, let's just do a quick search for, do we have M365? Okay, you can even see that it's wonky, that it's not letting me scroll.
Is it because it's not in dark mode?
Yes.
Do you want to see a trick?
Yeah, do it.
Do you want to see ultimate wonkiness? Let me switch it to dark mode. And I'll just take my hands away from the keyboard. And if this goes correctly, it should turn into a completely different page.
Yes, this is the best.
So you've definitely logged a support ticket about this one, Mark, right?
Well, I think it's, that's the first time I'd seen that screen again in a month. I thought I thought I was sort of catching it when they were basically transitioning, but now they seem to have brought it back again. Now the problem that we've got with this one is sometimes when we're in this one, let's say that we just want Microsoft 365 E5. If I click on details, okay, it's let me just check something here.
Still loading.
Is it grayed out, or does it just look like it's grayed out?
Just looks like it's grayed out.
It just looks like it's grayed out. Okay.
If you're not a robot.
Now,
but
but the thing here is I haven't given it any credentials for this tenant because I created this tenant from an existing tenant.
Yeah.
So all the things where you normally have to put in details, you can bypass a lot of that stuff. So let's just grab good old 6.1 wherever Australia is.
You may want to
let me. Yeah, I'll do that for you. I'll make your life easier, Ben.
Thank you. I feel like I'm in Sandra Bullock in the net with all this secret UIs by clicking buttons.
Okay, now I'm hoping
basic reference right there.
It's fine.
I'm hoping that the other bug kicks in here if I do get that verification code, because what happens very regularly here is you'll get the code, you'll enter the code and it will say, sorry, wrong code. And then it will continue to provision the tenant for you.
That's so good.
Yeah. I haven't received the SMS yet, so I might just try that again. Did I use? Yep, that is the second phone number that I know.
So that means Peter Warren just got a text message.
Okay,
No
and now
comment?
it looks like it's not sending me text messages.
Pardon me.
Maybe it's worked out my tricks. Well, even if it doesn't send me the text message, because I've used that phone number way too many times for it to still really think that I'm setting up a trial, let me walk you through what you can do.
Phone numbers attached to a robot.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that code will probably come through in 10 minutes. Let's see if it does. I'll just put my phone somewhere where I can actually see it. Okay, let me walk back out of this. Let's pretend that worked. Now, what will normally happen is someone will say, okay, I got to the end of the...
Looks like you're censoring the video there, Ben.
Oh, yeah, Ben, sorry.
Fine.
I shouldn't have closed that. Okay,
Expect the video next month.
I can just talk about what goes on there. So what you'll find there is that there'll be potentially multiple M3. So let's say that the focus that you've got is you want to do M365 E5 trials. What you can do there is choose that first one that I had to get your first, let's say 30 or 60 days, for example, because a lot of the time you'll get to 30 days and it says click here to extend and it will turn it into a 60-day. And then once that 60 days is expired, you'll find that, oh, hang on, there's a version of M365 E5 with no voice capabilities, for example. So then you can extend it for another 30 or 60 days from there. But then if you decide that if it's like, look, I only want to play around with, let's say, Office 365 E5 and let's say EMS E5 for the next month or two, then you can just drop those two trials in there. So you can keep dragging this out so that you can have active trials running for a real, so you can't run a single trial for too long, but you can keep adding additional trials to keep that environment going. So that way, if you're doing a lot of customization and testing things out and you don't want to have to keep configuring and pushing out the same scripts every month, for example, this is a way that you could go through and just keep that thing going. Now, I haven't tried to keep something going indefinitely, but I would, you'll get to the point where you probably want to set up something new anyway, because you'll need to cycle back through to something like an M365 E5. Now, the other thing that that I always do fairly shortly after I get that tenant running. Now, I can't do it from this side, but if I just go back into the Azure portal, let's pretend that I'm in the other tenant signed in as the admin user. So the problem that you've got if you're doing this approach and you're not doing any kind of maintenance is the list of other directories you've got access to is just going to drive you nuts. When you click a drop down that shows you different directories, that just keeps growing exponentially, which isn't really something that you want over time. You just want to sort of keep that fairly clean. So if you go in, so if I was in that other tenant as that admin at M365 MMUG, one of the first things I do in there is I'll go through and remove this user who is also a global admin from that tenant so that when I'm signed in as this user, I don't always see that one over on this side. So at that point, I've basically cut any ties between the two tenants. I'll set up an Edge profile for that new account so that I can basically just jump into that Edge profile and work with that tenant without thinking, oh, hang on, what was the subscription name or things like that, because all of those details are going to be cached. And then that just means that, yes, occasionally I'll have to go through. Actually, I don't know how bad. Okay, well, this one's actually, this is perfect. This is showing you where I've done things like that, where I've got additional tenants that I've used and then set free. But these are ones that were for courses, so I can basically delete these and keep it clean. So there's some of the things that you can do to keep subscriptions running for longer, because let's say if you really need something like an M365 to run all year round, yeah, sometimes it is just worth biting the bullet and saying, okay, I'll just fund, I'll fund it, or can I get my employee to fund it? It's not always an option, but that's also something that you can do. You don't have to sort of jump through hoops like I did there. But if you've got, like any of you who've got things like action pack subscriptions, or even those of you who work for partners, make sure that, if there are any unused cloud licenses that you've got that your organization isn't using, just make sure you're using those, because if the stats are anything like what they used to be like, a lot of the internal usage rights just are very heavily underutilized. So you might find that in your own organization, if you work for a partner, you might actually be able to get access to some of those things as well. So that's that's actually not a bad way to go through and just sort of keep some things running. So even though technically, yes, each of the things you're running could potentially only be a 30-day trial, you could run multiple things in succession and keep that environment running longer. And it's really up to you what approach you take. I know some of you are probably in a perfect world, what you'd probably be doing is saying, okay, what are the things I can do to automate? If I set up a new tenant, what are the things that I can do to automate all of those settings I had from the old tenant to get pushed into the new tenant? That would probably be the preferred way to go. But if you just sort of want to keep something running for a little bit longer, but what you'll find is that eventually a lot of these environments where you're just sort of treating them as test tenants, you probably just want to clean out and start from scratch anyway, because you end up getting a bunch of weird stuff because you forget some of the things that you've done. And I'm sure you've got weird things floating around in your environment, Steve and Ben and everyone else. And sometimes that fresh start is just a nice way to do it. Okay, so any questions around what I was just sort of covering there? Now, I don't think I haven't received SMSs yet. Okay, so well, that put a quick stop to that part of the demonstration. So I'm just taking a look. Yeah, so use Edge profiles for this stuff. So even down here, I've got Edge. Yeah, I've got Canary Dev, and actually this machine doesn't have release Edge on it. It's got all of the preview channels, but it doesn't have release. And so basically, I'm sure that if I sort of went through the others, I'd probably find that there were some additional profiles that I need to clean up as well. But there's no harm in keeping them around. Now, I guess this is where if everyone sort of wants to jump in and give some feedback in terms of some of the things that, like when it's time for you to build your labs, some of the things that you like, just some general recommendations, etc. I'm sure a lot of you work day in and day out with hardware. And you're thinking about what are you building out with your lab environments. And I guess the positive here is that this is a hell of a lot easier to do than it's ever been. If you think back to, it's not that, wasn't that long ago where, if someone said, oh, look, I need more than a handful of cores on my device to be able to sort of run all my VMs effectively, you're talking about a pretty pricey setup. Whereas these days, it's kind of nuts, the core counts that you can get. So what did you get, Ben? Because I know you did an upgrade pretty recently.
Still waiting. It's all in boxes. I'm getting a delivery tomorrow, hopefully, and then I'm going to take Friday off, and it's going to be glorious. I just got an AMD Ryzen 5. It's like an 8-core device, and like the CPU costs less than $200. It's ridiculous. Yeah. We are living in the future. The robots will take over.
Yeah. And one of the nice things that I think was announced just prior to Inspire was AMD processors now support, or it's not that they support it, it's Hyper-V now supports nested virtualization on those as well. So if you're doing anything with that. Now that ties into, I guess, one of the things that I wanted to talk about in terms of software. I'm a Hyper-V person. I think the last time I used VMware Workstation for anything like this was in the 1950s. I think that's about right.
Yeah, that's when PowerShell was released.
Yeah. So, and it's just because it's built in, and also if you're sort of bouncing back and forth between Azure and VMs on your local machine, just the the Azure VM services being Hyper-V based just makes things like if you've got a VM that you want to move up, it just sort of makes a lot of that stuff a lot easier. Using things like Hyper-V replica to push stuff up is just so brain dead. It's kind of shocking how simple it can be at times. Or even if you're just using it on Win 10, it's built in, it works. Now, obviously, there are going to be some reasons why you might want to use something else if you need some different kind of hardware support versus what Hyper-V gives you. Because if someone says, "Oh, well, I want the virtualization platform to do this or that," Hyper-V on the client side is basically inheriting capabilities as well as focus areas that might lead to client-side restrictions as well. So sometimes, people say, "I prefer this platform or that," but for the kind of thing we're talking about here, spinning up VMs, running autopilot, VMs, etc., this is definitely something that is easier. Now, the other thing to me that really puts a big tick against Hyper-V versus doing it with anything else here is once you start looking at things like what you can grab from the eval center. Now, in this case, if we jump in and take a look in here, what is it? Let's just jump into the Windows and Office Deployment Lab Kit. How many of you have downloaded this and gotten this up and running?
I have not.
Okay, so if you
What was the minimum memory requirement on that? I remember that hit me before.
Yes. So let's take a look. Let's see what it gives here now. Okay, so 16 gig of memory, 32 gig recommended.
Oh, that's
now.
better.
So this was something that the requirements for this haven't really changed over time. The problem is that thankfully everyone's PCs have gotten a lot better. So even those of you who've worked with things like the old POP kits from Microsoft, etc., they were things that if you had the memory and you weren't trying to do everything from a single mechanical drive in a laptop, you could get them working on you didn't have to have a really high spec machine, but if you're trying to do it on a 4 or 8 gig system, it was just impossible. But in this case, it's something where probably the big thing here is that also has gotten a lot better. And I'll just sort of kick it off just to get an idea of this. Actually, I won't do it. I think currently it sits around 26 gig or something like that. And one of the big improvements they've made with the download for this is that now it seems like they're using CDNs for distribution. Whereas if you went back a couple of years, this really was being distributed from a server somewhere near Redmond somewhere. So if you were downloading it from Australia, it was going to time out, guaranteed. So what I always used to have to do when I was trying to pull this down in the past was I've got like a US West 2 Azure VM. I've got an Australia East storage account. So I download it to the VM in US West and then copy it down to an Australia East storage account where I could then pull it down and saturate my internet connection. And I think I might have even used it to saturate a connection Quoc got me access to one time as well, because it was, it was more than an adequate connection that he got me one day or a week. I think he probably remembers what that was all about. So this is something that I highly recommend because it deploys a bunch of stuff and it gives you a lot of walkthroughs. Now, if you take a look at some of the stuff here, it will go through, give you all these different scenarios, but it's also going to be rolling out Endpoint Manager, etc., for you. So it's probably at least 10 VMs it deploys for you. And if you just want a nice environment where you can jump in and get working quickly, As long as you don't have it. So the download is, for some people, is probably going to be the slowest part. But otherwise, just get this deployed. It only supports Hyper-V. Now, I'm sure you could sort of hack it. So once you extracted it, you could probably mount it in something else. But it automatically configures everything it needs in Hyper-V. Now, I think I've got this deployed. I think I've already got this one downloaded, but not deployed. So I'll check on that just in case I can give you a demonstration of it before we finish out, just to show you what the installation process is like, so you can see how simple it is. Oh, so I'm just looking at Stephen's comment there. So for the M365, the dev tenant doesn't include Defender ATP. That's correct, which is a weird one because the developer one gets you, I think that's a 90-day subscription, and as long as they see some activity in it, I think they keep extending it. But that they don't have Defender ATP in it is the reason it's kind of like, oh no, not really. But there are also ways you can get Defender ATP without having Defender ATP licenses in the portal. But that's a topic for another conversation. It involves Azure Security Center, and yes, there are no licensing complications from it because it's something that Security Center will charge you for. So if you've got monthly credit for Azure that you're not using, you could actually get your Defender ATP licenses via that. It's a bit of a workaround, but you still get access to securitycenter.microsoft.com, etc. as well. Now, even just to sort of no, I won't show you that. I was going to show you that, but then I realized I'd have to sort of figure out what sign-in I'd have to use. So I won't. I'll get a couple of things set off to the side. Once Richard kicks off his bit, I'll get some of that stuff up and running. Now, just then I guess the final thing there in terms of the hardware side, these days it's like if you went back a couple of years, some of the recommendations that you'd always see people make around, getting stuff for your home lab equipment. For those of you who are outside of Australia, I need to explain what Grays Online is. It's an auction house where you could basically get a lot of things. So, for example,
Grays doesn't exist anymore.
So they don't?
No.
Okay. So the workstation that I use as a server, I got through Grays, and basically what it was something like a workstation that someone ordered from Dell and went, oh, I ordered the wrong one, sent it back, and I got it for like a quarter of the price. And dual Xeon, 100 and something gig of memory, etc., in it for a couple of $1,000s. So but these days though, with the prices of, especially the CPU prices these days, like I'd sort of say you're probably better off getting something new, even if you have to go lower on the CPU and not maybe get as many cores, because in another 6 to 12 months, you'd probably be able to get another CPU with double the cores for another couple of $100, as opposed to, we just didn't have those options previously. For the storage side, if you are looking at using things like that Office and Windows deployment kit, putting it onto an SSD or onto, you don't have to go all the way to an NVMe drive. You're not doing a lot of constant write activity where you're probably going to notice that much of a difference between like a Gen 4 PCIe NVMe drive versus a SATA 3 drive. Unless you're hammering it pretty hard and pretty consistently, you don't need to go overboard in terms of spending there. So, and even if you think of even these days, like a laptop with a decent amount of memory and even like a mid-range M2 drive is going to do a really good job of running this stuff. It's going to be head and shoulders above anything you've really had access to run this kind of stuff in the past. Now, is there anything else around this? So I guess this is where I'll sort of step back and let other people talk about their environments and some of the things that they found handy. And while everyone's sort of covering that stuff off, I'll see if I can find where I've got that kit, just so I can show you what the setup process looks like.
While I'm working on my lab right now, I'd just like to point out that having 256 gig of RAM is really good, but when the processor is only a 2-core, 2 gig Intel Xeon from like the 70s, I'm not looking at a gift horse in the mouth. Steve, I'm not complaining. I am not complaining.
The whole server for free.
Suffice to say, the more RAM you have, the longer it takes to boot up.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, just be aware of that. But yeah, no, it's good. See if you can get it racked up somewhere else where you don't have to pay for the electricity. Is what I'm trying to get at.
100%.
And that, yeah, and I guess that's probably also one of the things that if someone mainly works on the desktop side and hasn't had that much server exposure, you probably want to stay away from servers unless you know just how noisy they really can be.
What about for routers? What have people been doing there so they can, create little network segments, things like that, but still get internet connectivity? That's always a little bit fun with, how to put it, ISP provided routers.
Okay, well, I'll let someone else jump in for now. I'll comment on that in a moment.
So can you re-ask the question?
So some of the fun can have is segmenting up VLANs, maintaining internet access, especially with the quality of routers ISPs provide. I was wondering what people are using out there. I was seeing someone saying with Unify, I'm seeing that Ubiquity mentioned a lot out there.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you honestly, and this sort of comes down to a price point, and apologies for anyone that's from Europe, I'm going to talk in kangaroo dollars. If you're spending more than $300-ish on a router, it generally affords you the ability to start segmenting out your network. And honestly, just as on a personal note, if you're still using your ISP router, Steve, you need to change that. Like I've got it's like an Asus something in the back end that honestly at one point probably cost about $400. I know I can pick it up for $200 now, but it allows me to do as many VLAN routes as I want. It's kind of like what we were talking about with the CPUs, just like that sort of pro level hardware is actually becoming really affordable. So yeah, just basically the only thing I would recommend is just don't use the ISP provided stuff if you want to start doing complex VLAN configs.
See, I just do all of that on my Hyper-V host.
Yeah, sure. And so do I. I very rarely touch it, but I still think
you still got a route from your Hyper-V to your router, but yeah.
Oh no, that's the easy one. Because I have an ROS on my in my Hyper-V lab that handles all of my network traffic inside there and routes out.
Okay.
Hey,
trying to kill his hard drive.
Georgie, I just wanted to, just while you're on the call, I just wanted to let you know that I'm running into Mimecast firewall things again, and I completely forgot about all of that punishment.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah.
I got lots of emails and documentation apparently on that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll fire it back at you.
Thanks, mate.
No worries.
Should still be in Smartbox.
Yeah, no, it's still there. I just forgot about it. I blocked it out. It was like a traumatic experience. If anyone is, if anyone's played Mimecast, all right. So I'm just gonna do this while everyone's getting everything set up. Mimecast is a special level of hell where the firewall request comes in after the first reboot. So you deploy the application and it successfully installs. Everything's all good. You don't think about it, and then you reboot your machine, and you get a prompt asking you to configure the firewall whitelist that requires UAC. Yeah, that's all I have. I dislike Mimecast.
I never had any problem setting it up.
That's good for you, Steve. I think I just need to set up a firewall policy, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Correct.
Sweet.
Yep.
Oh, it's on all of them. I've got 6 machines running on my Hyper-V server for a single client at the moment. I think my goal, my sort of highest amount was 10 at once for George. That was great.
Yeah, you did well. You did well.
Yeah, I maxed out the
Optimization
CPU.
part.
I maxed out the CPU.
And the DO component right there would have been perfect. So it would have been just sharing constantly.
That was the plan. Yeah, it was to verify DO.
Okay, well, for some reason, this seems to be taking forever, but I'll just let that run in the background while
She
Richard
didn't
jumps
sacrifice anyone for the DO for the demo gods.
Oh, okay. So let's jump back to the network. So I found a solution.
Sorry to jump in, Mark. I think last month we were talking about the DO and we were having some bad experience. Have you done more testing on that stuff? Did you get it?
No, I haven't. So it works. It's just that the issue. So I've sort of, instead of trying to fix the issue that I've been having, I found I realized that I already had a workaround in place that I could have used. So one of the issues that I was having when I was basically trying to get too many VMs, like even in this case, you can see like starting up a bunch of autopilot VMs after a reset. My ISP provided router would basically hang. It wouldn't show as disconnected. You would get into a state where it wouldn't actually trigger the my other router to fail over to the second connection, which is a 4G connection. And then I realized, hang on, rather than sort of directly connecting the 4G modem to the second WAN port, I could connect the second WAN port to another switch. And now I'm basically pointing all of these VMs that are going for that any kind of update traffic. I'm basically doing all of that over a 4G connection. So it's basically not kicking me off Teams whenever DO kicks in aggressively. So so far so good. It's actually working. And yeah, it was something I should have thought of it a while ago. But in terms of the challenge that I'm still seeing with DO is you basically have to have everything happening at once for it to kick in, or you have to have extremely restricted internet connectivity for it to really get those high stats. If someone comes in at 8 and their machine updates and restarts and someone else comes in, the things that seem to be pretty good with DO still working, your Office installs and Office upgrades seem to be really good regardless of the network conditions in terms of benefiting from DO, but store apps and dates in general seem to go, well, you've got plenty of bandwidth, I might as well use your internet bandwidth rather than local, unless they're forced to use local. But at least now I can sort of do all of that stuff here. So all of these VMs, or the switch here is, oops, sorry, wrong one. Over here on the switch manager, yeah, basically this switch here is just going straight into another, oops, sorry. Yeah, so this switch here is just going into, so the virtual switch is just going into a small physical switch, which I've got a few other things plugged into as well as the 4G modem. So this way I can saturate that, and it doesn't have any, it basically copes when it gets overloaded with DO or with update traffic. And that way everything keeps working and can sort of get a bunch of things running. But now that the screen's sharing again, I found where I've already downloaded that latest version of the deployment lab update kit. I'm just running the installer, and you can see here that it's just going through and deploying things. And it goes through and it will kick off the gateway and the DC. And then you can go through and starting up the other VMs as needed, just to make sure that if you don't have the recommended 32 gig of memory, you can still work in a smaller memory space there. Okay, so let's just jump back out. So I guess is there anything else that people want to cover on the lab side? And I can see we've got Richard waiting in the wings to come on to swoop on in. But just for me, for the networking side, having a router that supports second WAN port failover is an absolute godsend for me with NBN. I only wish it would fail over faster. Yeah, not as I want it to fail over faster, but not as frequently. Okay, and I think that's it. So there, so you can congratulate me. While you were watching that, I just set up a DC config manager, MDT server, SQL server. I did all of that.
That's awesome. Steve's
Yeah.
got a script that will provision a config manager environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, full config manager, a RAS, domain controller, CA, in what, 45 minutes?
That's pretty good. If you want, I'll put a link to the to anyone's scripts. Send a link in the chat, and I'll put the links when I get the video up.
You've got my link already, Ben.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, it was for other people, Steve.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess if there's nothing else, if Richard wants to, if you want to jump in, Richard. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
I'll jump onto mute.
Put on a small prayer to the demo gods and let's see what we can do. Get the PowerPoint up.
I wouldn't trust him, Bruce.
Here we go. So we've got Aaron Parker on board. Blogs helped me out on an original deployment that I did for Salesforce. So thanks, Aaron, and your blogs have been quite useful for a number of other things that I've done. So good to see you in here. I just sort of put up some cockatoos because obviously Mark loves his birds. So that's what was outside my house today. All right. Cool. Azure AD identity provisioning, pretty simple to do. Benefits, you sell to your boss and security. You can automate onboarding, offboarding, reduces security attack surface, simplifies your access reviews, like number of systems with your IDs in. Synchronize your data, clean all that up. The case that I did it, they found there was a ton of name changes and roles that had changed, managers had changed, etc. So you can do a very quick cleanup of an environment as well, as long as your source is good. It's pretty simple, it's serverless, and Microsoft have done a pretty good job of updating and maintaining the documentation. And if you find anything, I've found also that they'll make the changes quite quickly. In there's recipes for it's probably about 100 different apps in there. ServiceNow, Oracle's in there. There's some of the big ones there. See SuccessFactors, Salesforce, some of the Adobe DocuSign. So if you start hearing about people wanting to do stuff on the side, little shadow IT projects, that this is another way of getting people to jump into the IT fold, and you can start selling them on the security benefits of this as well. Cool. And of course, there's a licensing implication. You can do some of this with the what comes out of the box free, but really you want to have a P1 that get to know the actual application you're deploying to, work with the team that you're deploying with, the Salesforce admin, get your role mappings and AD group assignments documented well, make sure you got a nice matching ID, e.g. an employee number. Email addresses can change, especially if you get marriages, divorces, things like that. And obviously run it in Sandbox first and identify your discrepancies. And Aaron Dinage always got a good thing with the licensing. Anyone ever wants to look what's uncertain about something with the licensing, this is always a good first port of call to have a look at. All right, let's actually get on and do some actual, let's see, we're talking about the profiles with Edge. So hopefully I can get the right profile up straight away. And that was the wrong one. Okay, so where do you start? Azure Active Directory, enterprise applications. So here's the ones that are existing. If you want to add a new one, just search through, and as you can see, there's a whole pile of stuff all there ready for you to go. So we'll give an attempt to set up on a new one. So this is really where the initial test user you'll set up. Make sure you hit the select the role. If you got custom roles, you'll only see the out of the box roles first of all. And then when the synchronization is set up later on, you can come back, add in, and you can see the custom roles to actually map and assign that. So now the people that are in this group will be assigned to Salesforce with that particular role when you get the rest of the stuff up and running. Single sign-on. This has been made ridiculously easy. A wrong page there. So you'll get this information from your Salesforce admin, or like myself, I've set up a Salesforce developer account to do this with. The only downside with a developer account, you're limited to 2 users. So basically you'll go through and set up the initial step for the link there. However, I've done one earlier. So these are the actual domain that I set up in Salesforce. I'm already signed in on Salesforce. Hopefully that's maintained. And that should have opened up and set up. Where are we? So the demo gods have decided to abandon me right now. When I was doing this earlier, what it did was automatically kick off over to Salesforce. Couldn't download. Why can't you download?
You needed to sacrifice someone. I told you.
Any volunteers for sacrifice?
Yeah, sure. I'm pretty bored.
I volunteer, Ben. David, you have a question?
I think he was volunteering himself.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start this manually. So download the XML file. If you press that button, it does this state automatically for you. And then in Salesforce itself, so that's the name of the SAML that I set up there. Now, in theory, it's again where the so I can now flip over to the single sign-on. So you can enforce it where everyone goes to. Oh, great. It signed me out. And of course, the other benefit of this is this will use any conditional access policies, etc., to apply on there. So it can assist, again, further enforcing the security. And there, it signed me in as that user that was in that group earlier, using Azure AD rather than having to put in your username and password. So if you're already signed into Azure AD, that would have taken you straight through in there. Now, the other side of this is user provisioning. So to start the user provisioning, put in the admin username you got for Salesforce, the password, and then the token which you'll generate under your profile in Salesforce. Obviously, you'd use a service account to do that. The real nice area on this is when you come under the mappings. So there's the out-of-the-box mappings. I suggest changing the matching to a employee ID if you've got that, something else, which I've added down here. Under the advanced options, there's some really funky attributes that you can start gathering, both from, you can use custom attributes in Azure AD to set those up with PowerShell, or you can use the extended attributes out of AD, but you can now start also populating other information in Salesforce, like the state, but some really nice things, putting the manager in. So you now get your whole hierarchy of the organization automatically going across to Salesforce, or say, ServiceNow, whatever application it is that you're using. So now you're just taking off a whole bunch of administration work out of the Salesforce team and put it back on your identity team with central control there. Set up the roles automatically as well out of there. So people change roles, that will also automatically flow through. Don't know how many times you change role in an organization, but none of your groups, etc., followed through, and you've had to reset up a whole pile of different access, put in about 10 different requests to get new access to different services. Other critical parts on this to look at is making sure the rules for deprovisioning happen right. So again, under the mappings, change around the scope. So things like if some, if it's enabled, etc., you can add further reasons to actually disable the user, not and further restrict who can actually get access there if required. But generally, the groups will handle what you require on that. And then obviously conditional access policies you can set on a per app basis as well. So you could say if you want an app that's got your crown jewels in, put something a more restrictive policy around that. So follow or just follow the organizational patterns as well. The reason why I jumped into this was I was asked to do a lift and shift of a Salesforce Identity Connect physical server across to Azure, and this just struck me as a far simpler way of doing the same thing. Really, the main hurdles were getting the organization across architecturally to sign off. This is the way they actually wanted to do identity, and when they saw it, they're like, this is a no-brainer. This is something we've got to do straight away. So that simplified that project and cleaned up their identities very quickly, rather than shifting something over that wasn't working for them anyway. Cool. I'll try to make that as quick as possible. So I think we've been on for a while.
Okay, thanks, Richard. So any questions for Richard?
Jose had a conversation that I think would be worthwhile bringing up if you wanted to do that.
So I think the companies need to start thinking strategically about identity authentication and how they're doing zero trust and how they're providing access to users, especially in the COVID world externally. You got the cost. Yep, there's an additional cost there, but that cost provides a whole pile of benefits way beyond just provisioning the applications. What companies are doing now regarding VPN, where they're paying their providers enormous extra amounts of money for that. What they are costing them on provisioning identities, what the potential cost is if an identity isn't deleted out of a system when someone leaves, and then that system is then leveraged. Having a good identity strategy and implementation will more than justify itself cost and risk-wise. But how you transfer that risk to a cost, it's always a challenge if a company has zero focus on risk. But focus on the risk side, you'll find an identity strategy will help a lot. Does that answer your question, Jose?
Yeah, definitely. It's just like I work on a security company myself, so it's just hard sometimes to make them see the value on that stuff. We try to use SAML and say every single app should you just be using Azure AD, and then you have a single identity. Once someone leaves, that's what you just said. You just disable one account and does everything. Or like sometimes people say, yeah, I need to buy another extra license for this, another extra license for this, just for this SAML feature. And sometimes it's just not justifiable. I think like. That's in case part of like you Salesforce or use lacks of time, because sometimes it's just add SAML and it's an another extra charge. It doesn't add any other thing. And my understanding is they are moving the management of the identity to Azure, so it's one less headache they should have. So they should be doing that for free. If not, then it bears the conversation if they're using your data for something else or they're monetizing, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, there are some some external apps, as you say, that will charge extra to use SAML. Adobe, I think, is one of those. But yeah, to me, security should be there by default. Parts of the costs are also service desk calls, password resets, time spent, managing the information in an app. So yeah, there are savings for organizations as well. Sorry to get on the cost topic, everybody. I know you love that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fine. It's cost or licensing, man. They're the two things no one can avoid.
Yep.
Actually, I think this is the first time it hasn't been me who's forced us down that path.
Is that the royal we as you as Microsoft? Or is that?
No, it always comes up. It always comes up.
Me as an individual, always making sure that people know what's whatever we're talking about, what it's included with.
Yeah. At least it's not an E5 this time.
Yeah, true.
Just.
But which E5?
Hey, Bruce,
There's only one. It's M365 E5. That's the only one that exists.
Only one that exists.
Exactly.
Well, that we'll acknowledge anyway.
Yeah. Bruce, I don't know whether you've got a mic set up or anything, but can you talk about TeamViewer licensing? Is that a thing that you want to talk about, or is it going to send everyone to sleep?
Nah. So TeamViewer, for you to do SSO, exactly what you guys were talking about. You have to buy their Tensor license. Their Tensor license, that's what it's called. A regular price is $1,800 a pop per user, right? So now you're getting away from their concurrent licensing, which is the affordable model, right?
Yep.
Which is their corporate license, and then you have to start doing the user-based license, which is $1,800 each just to do SSO. Well, it comes with some other stuff, some extra logging features, but all we need is the SSO piece, but that only comes with Tensor.
That's crazy.
How does that work with the Intune integration? Do you have to have that license to do the TeamViewer Intune integration?
No, you don't need that license for Intune. You simply need an enterprise license, which I assume that's the concurrent. Yeah, it's cheap. It's not like it's not well, yeah, but it's not as expensive as the Tensor.
That's right. True.
I've yet to run into someone who's turned around and said that it's too expensive for the benefit that it has.
I'm sure George would be able to give us some guidance around that price point.
George?
I'd say it's expensive.
Yeah?
Yeah. And it gets more expensive the more you want to add.
Sure.
Yep.
So, you know, I'm starting to use Microsoft Teams more than I'm using TeamViewer now.
Really?
Because it's just less of a headache easier for the end users. Click here, click there, click here. And Microsoft Teams, mate, they just click, share, access, granted, done.
Yep.
Seems to be working a hell of a lot quicker and smarter. I mean, sure, it doesn't log anything, but
yeah, I mean, the other downside is that you don't then have the ability to do UAC. You know,
correct.
which is the downside, but
so security is a downside.
Yeah,
I
so
wonder how many times you gotta ask the end user to click the start button for you, because in Teams you can't hit that little corner there.
Yeah. Nathan's just mentioned in the comments there that for Intune, TeamViewer is about $2,000 per 500 device seats for the year.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's not device seats that you pay for TeamViewer licensing. You're paying for concurrent seats. So if you've got 3 admins, you could get away with buying 1, maybe 2 in TeamViewer licenses.
Yeah.
Conceptually, and that's
we buy 5, and it's $3.5, $4 grand.
Yeah, and obviously your mileage may vary, your deals may vary. These are just abstract numbers that we're dealing with.
Exactly. As a consultant who doesn't need to think about the cost, I think it's fantastic when it's just set up.
Yes. Just got to justify it to the client.
Oh, listen, I mean, the value prop of just having it there is fantastic. That you can just, you know, you deploy the client out to the machines, and then you've immediately got UAC or like full admin access to devices. That alone is to me is worth the entry. But obviously, if you just need the usability of just getting and like seeing someone's computer, like George is talking about, then sure, I understand why you wouldn't necessarily need that cost. But yeah,
people that budget the license don't even understand what is UAC then, so they don't care.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I'm not going to be in those conversations explaining to them what admin access is. We just give everyone local admin. It's quite simple.
Well, yeah, it's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
To say how much would the CEO pay for somebody to come out to their house?
Yeah, exactly. I only drive in very expensive private cars as well.
I only do Uber Black.
It's helicopters only for me, actually.
You have a helipad, right?
If they're willing to pay for one.
Yeah, corporate is the minimum requirement for TeamViewer. I know we looked at it for using it to record Intune training, and it was prohibitive just to even get you. And there is no troll version for it.
Yeah, right.
And you've got to pay, even though it's by the month, you've got to pay 12 months in front. So it's
Yeah. So Bruce, what are you saying? That you haven't seen any usability?
Yeah, I don't see a use for it. All the guys on the team,
So-
including myself, we use the full client to remote machines.
Yeah. So
But that's,
I mean,
you've got the Tesla license, don't you, Bruce? Or is this still the cheap one?
Nah, this is the corporate license, so I have it integrated, but I see no need for the integration there.
So the integration, all right. So let's so we're not talking about SAML, we're not talking about any of this stuff. Let's just get into this. The only benefit for TeamViewer integration in Intune is if you initiate remote connection through endpoint, they are logged and tracked. Therefore, you can tell when people are accessing machines, and if anyone's doing not nice, very naughty things, you can find out exactly when it happened, and you can put them in the corner and tell them they're in timeout.
Yeah, and the other, so there's actually.
But the problem is you can bypass that, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
if you access directly with the code.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is the other advantage of using TeamViewer via Intune is you don't need to put the code in.
Yeah.
So the users,
but there's two things around that.
There's no requirement to get that code provided.
So there's two things around that, that what Steve was saying. So the first one is if you don't actually deploy the TeamViewer client to machines, and I'm not talking about the full host, just the client. So if you don't deploy that, you can access the machine if you have the integration there. The downside to it is that you cannot bypass or you cannot elevate yourself, which kind of removes the point of using TeamViewer in the first place. But it does mean that you can remote onto the machine without having to install another client or agent on the machine, which is really good. I've found repeatedly that there's no use for a remote agent that I can't elevate myself. So it does mean that you need to deploy the client and the host depending on use cases. But yes, it's very much bypassable, and then you can start going down the route of being the fun police and telling people if they're not using it properly, then they don't get access to it, et cetera, et cetera.
That's interesting. I didn't know you could access even without installing the client if you had the integration.
Yeah, so the company portal has got a cut down version of it.
It's the quick start version.
Yeah, it's the quick start. It's like it. But so the reason that you can't do admin privileges is because it runs in the context of the company portal, which is the user. So you get the same access that the user has if you use the quick start version, which is integrated.
How cool would be if they changed that? They would run a system.
It'd be way too risky.
Yeah,
yes, it would be cool. But also, I mean, at the same time, deploying the client is very easy. Anyway, Intune applications, they're boring.
Yes. So is there any other questions that people want to go over about the topic or anything else around Intune and 365 while we're on the call?
We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to think of some amazing questions. All right, silence is golden. It sounds like we might wrap up early.
Yep,
Sounds like it's me.
No, thanks, everyone, coming along.
Okay, yep.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah, thanks for presenting.
Cool. So when's the next user group? Have we got all that lined up?
Yep. It's
all in Meetup, ready to go.
Fantastic.
And maybe we'll try and get the link up there earlier this time.
Definitely. Yep. You know it.
we got a clue what the next topic will be, who it will be?
We can talk about that now.
Yep.
So what's the next topic?
So let me check some of the things that were nominated at the last one. Let's just go through some of those and see which ones are probably more probably good timing.
I want to put my hand up and suggest. So I've been doing a lot of work with Azure Image Builder lately. I don't know whether anyone's got any value in or anyone wants to know how that works, but I need to learn more about it. So showing other people is a great way for me to learn that. So
yeah, I'd be keen on that, Ben.
yeah,
I was
okay,
looking
cool.
at that a month or so ago. And,
Nice.
It
Yeah.
seems a bit
So
complicated. So
well, okay. So it is. There's all the documentation on it is written quickly. It's best efforts. And the just the initial hurdle is quite hard. So I've actually created some helper module stuff that to get past that hurdle that I'll publish closer to next month, I think. And yeah, and then we can demo it and I'll show everyone sort of how it works. What is Image Builder in 100 words or less? Okay. Nathan's asked, what is Image Builder in 100 words or less?
And
Image
you've
Builder,
just used like 30 words there.
No, that's the title. Image Builder allows you to provision template images that are customized that allow you to scale them out. So think of building your gold images or your standard operating environments, but instead of building virtual machines, you're building templates to build virtual machines. The benefit of them is, I'm going past my 100 words. I've done that. Has anyone looked at kind of like ARM templates? Kind of. You can use this with ARM templates. The point of this is like, has anyone used Packer?
Yep, I've used Packer.
Yep. So Packer is a very similar concept. The idea is that you point at a reference image. So in this case, say I want to use my my Win10 multi-user or multi-concurrent user image. There's a term for it. What is it? EVD? I can't remember. That doesn't matter. But so, okay, so you say, I'm going to use this as my base image. I'm then going to do things to it. So in this case, I'm going to run a concurrent or a stack of PowerShell scripts to do things, to install applications, to set certain things. Once it's done all of that, it then creates a sys-prepped version of that and creates your gold template. From that template, you can then go, I want 100 machines built off that template. That's what this gives you in a very easy to use package. At the moment, it's kind of complex because there's not a lot of UI because it's very much in early preview stages. The other benefit of it is once you create that image, you can then use it in WVD. So the next question was cool, but isn't that the point of Intune? So this is the scenario where if you're building session hosts in WVD, they're not managed by Intune. So if we have a WVD scenario or an environment where we have 5 session hosts set up, and then the client that has this, sorry, yes, WVD is Windows Virtual Desktop. We talked about it last month. So the client comes back to us and says that we have a new version of application X that needs to go out to all of our WVD session hosts. Instead of doing that, what we do is we update our template with that new version, and we then set aside time during our production to simply drain our session hosts so everyone signs out of them. We then provision 5 new session hosts with the updated template, and then we decom the old one. So that we're just constantly maintaining a single reference image, and then we can just grow and shrink our WVD environment. It's very exciting. I got all this from last month. I knew nothing about WVD, and now I'm talking about scale sets and using Azure Image Builder. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
I need to sleep. So anyway, yes. Yeah, it's good. Azure Image Builder is going to be the future of template management. It's just going to be the thing you use. So I'll talk about that next month. I think that's a good one.
Cool. I've just started a new job, so in a couple of months, hopefully I'll have something meaty I can talk about.
Sweet.
So, and it's for a big Microsoft partner, so hopefully I'll have some good access to lab stuff. So rather than hacking something together.
Okay, well,
cool.
I think that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thanks a lot. And I think, yeah, it looked like we weren't going to get too close to 7:30, but we nearly stretched it out there.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Very good session.
And I'll stop recording.